And that is where we start this hour. Here's a live look at the Senate floor right now as the Senate continues the vote-a-rama on the massive Republican-backed tax bill. The legislation, also known as the Big Beautiful Bill, is the major centerpiece of President Trump's second-term agenda. Lawmakers worked late into the weekend on the bill. Senate Republicans voted Saturday night to advance the measure. All but two voted in favor of the procedural motion. The GOP faces Trump's imposed July 4th deadline to get this to his desk. That's Friday. But Democrats worked to slow the process down. Senate clerks completed a nearly 16 hours readout of the 940-page bill at their request. Once the bill makes it out of the Senate, it will head back to the House for final approval before getting President Trump's signature. So what's included in the bill? Some of the controversial pieces of legislation include restrictions to Medicaid, raising the debt limit by $5 trillion, limits on overtime and tips deductions, boosts to defense funding and immigration enforcement. Senate Majority Leader John Thune and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer addressed the chamber before the voting started. Take a listen.
With every rewrite, Senate Republicans have made their bill more extreme, pro-billionaire, and more hostile to people's health care and livelihood. Why do they do that? There's a small group on that side of the aisle, MAGA hard right-wingers, who are dictating what's happened, and all the rest of the senators on the Republican side who know it's wrong go along. A small group. They don't represent more than 10% of the American people, but they're dictating what this body does. A, because of the rules we have, a simple majority, but B, because our colleagues on the Republican side lack the courage of their convictions to do the right thing for the American people. It's outrageous.
And Republicans fundamentally have believed that it's better if you allow the American people to keep their own money, that you distribute power out of Washington, D.C., back to state and local governments who are closer to the people and can make better decisions that are more informed by what's actually happened in their individual states. And so when we use reconciliation to keep taxes low, and by the way, that's all we are doing here is extending current tax policy. We are preventing over a $4 trillion tax increase on the American people. And when you vote against this, that's what you'd be voting for.
CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion joins us now from Capitol Hill with the latest on where this vote stands right now. Nikole, good to see you again. We know the vote-a-rama process is now underway, but what does this look like and what are both sides ultimately trying to accomplish?
Well, it's not as fun as it may sound, but look, this is an opportunity for senators to offer unlimited amendments, in some cases trying to make tweaks or improvements to the bill. In other cases, it's more of a messaging tactic. That's certainly the plan on the part of many Senate Democrats who really want to use this as an opportunity to force some tough votes for Republicans on this bill to see where they stand, particularly on some of the more controversial provisions. Republicans, for their part, there was a lot of last-minute horse trading and wrangling behind closed doors just to get senators to vote to proceed with this package late Saturday. So some senators were able to extract a deal, if you will, to get their amendment in this vote-a-rama process in exchange for voting to advance the bill on Saturday. So that is pretty much what we're going to be seeing on the Senate floor over the next couple of hours here. Unclear how long this could go, but once they do wrap, we should see that final vote on the bill at some point, if not today, perhaps tomorrow.
And can you walk us through some of the late changes that were made to this bill? What have we seen so far?
Yeah, well, keep in mind this bill dropped late Friday night, actually just before midnight, totaled some 940 pages, and that's in part why Democrats said, look, people need to know what's in this bill, even some of their fellow senators. So that's why they had the clerks read it out loud. But look, there were a couple of changes made at the last minute, really to satisfy some of the concerns of senators, particularly around the issues, once again, of Medicaid and this issue of rural hospitals. So, for instance, we saw a $25 billion rural hospital fund added to this package. It was initially going to be about $15 billion, but they upped that total because there were a number of moderate Republicans who were concerned about that some of the Medicaid cuts could negatively impact rural hospitals. So this is to try to offset that. We also saw some changes to the state and local tax deduction. That was kind of a sticking point, particularly for blue state Republicans in the House. They had worked on a carefully crafted deal with the Speaker to cap deductions around $40,000 a year. So they changed that provision a little bit by sunsetting it a little sooner. So those were a couple of the tweaks made to the bill, but it certainly was enough to get some senators to advance the package over the weekend.
Okay. And Nikole, I also want to ask you about Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina, who announced that he will not be running for a re-election. What are you hearing right now on Capitol Hill about that?
Yeah, well, this kind of came as a bit of a surprise to some. Late yesterday, I was here at the Capitol, and certainly a lot of people were taking a closer look at their phones when that statement came out. I mean, what was notable is that going back to what happened over the weekend, Saturday night when they had that vote, the initial vote to move this package forward, Thom Tillis, well in advance of it, said that he would not support it, and furthermore that he wasn't going to support this bill. And then within 24 hours, he came out with a statement saying that he's not going to run for re-election. Look, he was one of the main opponents to some of the Medicaid provisions in it, particularly some of these provisions around changing the formula that states are funded with respect to Medicaid. So that was a real big sticking point to him. But he told me ultimately this bill was not the deciding factor in his decision not to seek re-election, but more so just the tenor here on Capitol Hill and what he feels has become just too much gridlock. Take a listen to what he told me just last night after speaking on the Senate floor.
If you've got to surprise or jam your conference to get something done, you're a pretty legislator, and that's just not my style. Because if we're responsible for moving this bill, I believe that it's going to be a massive mistake.
So the point he was trying to make there is, part of this is also process. It wasn't the bill, but just the process of trying to get this through so quickly, dropping the bill, trying to push it, by this arbitrary July 4th deadline. He is somebody who traditionally has worked across the aisle, who feels, you really have to kind of massage the situation and work across the aisle to really enact substantive change. He felt with the Medicaid portions of this bill that they would likely sell his constituents short and that some people would lose coverage. So that remains a big concern that he has, but ultimately just the tone and tenor here on Capitol Hill was a bit much, not to mention he said he just wasn't necessarily looking forward to running for re-election again.
I assume it takes a lot of work, energy, and time to run for re-election. Nikole Killion from Capitol Hill for us. Thank you so much for your reporting. Appreciate it.